This is Outriders Worldslayer. We're here on Xbox Series X, diving into the expansion that really does grow the game in some interesting ways. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So, what are we getting here? If you didn't already see Outriders, dynamic 4K resolution, very close to hitting the max number there, but it does drop when needed. 60 FPS, HDR support. And yeah, this is a very interesting expansion to Outriders. So we're going to be mostly focusing on the actual additional portion of the game, but also talk about the overall game as well. So the first thing to note is that we are playing what I would call sort of the new end game content. You may be wondering, oh wow, isn't that like spoilerish? Not really. So this is kind of like a new way to kind of do extra challenges, extra layers, as you look for lost secrets in the world, I guess you would say. It's kind of a neat little extra to the game, you know, maybe similar to the pods a little bit, but I think this actually does offer just some interesting new things to do. It's very, I guess you would say, almost raid-like in terms of gameplay, because you can go in, like, you could play Outriders by yourself, if you'd like to. It's not too bad. Or you can jump in and play as, like, a team. You know, you can have a team of 3 players working together in co-op, so I just died there. A little embarrassing off the bat. But that is also the gameplay loop here, is that you get so many tries or attempts to work through this area. And there's different spots to it, too. It's not just, there's the temple there, there's the proving grounds over there, there's another area over here to the left that we're going to be heading to. So it's kind of neat in that way. So I would suggest, if you can, play it with others, because it's a little bit more fun. There is matchmaking options as well, if you just want to jump in and join others. But there is a story here in the Worldslayer. So this is after the game ends. But you can choose, if you want to jump in freshly, just to go, apparently, right up to level 30, and then do this end game content. But I mean, you skip the whole story, so it kind of seems really illogical to do that, unless you want to do a new character and do that sort of thing. So I guess that would make sense, but yeah, it's a bit odd. So anyways, you get a few hour story, I would say. Yeah, it's about a few hours long, and it expands the core narrative and kind of wraps things up, I would say, for a lot of the characters. It was a nice little extra addition that I hadn't really expected. I wasn't sure if we were going to get any sort of real additional content for this game, because I guess it wasn't really live service. It was just kind of like a, you know, it was just kind of a RPG experience that you can enjoy. And that is totally fine. I don't have issues with that. I was kind of like being, oh, I really want to see more from this world. You know, I don't know if we're going to see more from it. So the fact that we just have this expansion here that came out, I was very happy. I was like, okay, cool, we get to see a little bit more of the action, deal with some of the new, you know, kind of threats that have arisen, and we get a deeper look at the lore. So this one was really focused on, again, dealing with the anomaly, and kind of, I would say, wrapping things up while also leaving the door open to do other stuff if they so please down the road. But I think the biggest thing is that fans of, you know, if you are a fan of this game, story-wise, you will feel very satisfied with how this one concludes, really, how this one kind of wraps up. Now, will we get additional content down the road? I have no idea. I would actually love to have little expansions similar to this over time. I would totally be down for that. But, you know, if we don't, I will say that this was, for me, a satisfying enough wrap-up for the overall game. I was like, okay, cool. You know, it's finishing off, it's doing stuff. I was actually thinking it was going to be very conclusive, but that wasn't the case. I mean, I really don't know if we'll see any sequels out of this, but, you know, I really am down for more. This universe is crazy, it's weird, it's a little messed up, and I quite like what it has to offer. So the environments are a little bit different this time. We get to go to some new places on the planet. You get to visit also some familiar ones in a little bit of a different setup, which is neat. So you kind of start things off with this very icy kind of biome. You're like, okay, it's it's cold, it's freezing, what are we looking for? Oh, a drop pod, and it's like, oh no, the anomalies, they're getting worse, what are we going to do? And that's kind of the big question that's posed at the beginning of this experience, is kind of like, okay, well, we're kind of like a little doomed here. What's going to happen? How do we get to this point? There's maybe like a lost kind of bit of info that we need. Do we have to work with the enemy to get this done? What's happening here? So from the ice area, you get to see like a spooky mist-driven kind of like harbor. You get to go behind some enemy lines. Just, like in the regular campaign, you get to see some really messed up areas and stuff like that. There's some new enemy types. There's some new monstrous type things you have to deal with. You get a little bit more background context on the lore of, I guess you would say, the indigenous groups and the things that have always been on this planet, and you get to understand a bit more of the directions of your foe. There's kind of a really intensive boss individual that you have to deal with along the way. You get to see them a few times. That's your primary antagonist. And yeah, it was interesting. And again, a few hours. They probably could have, expanded the scope of this into a bit of a sequel almost, or, they could have went even further with it, I think, material-wise, but I was satisfied with it. It was pretty easy going. I had some fun. There's some fresh areas, some fresh battles to do, interesting setups. I liked it. That's the biggest thing, is I was kind of like, okay, if you like Outriders and you feel like there's, you want more, you want something new to do, that's exactly what this kind of expansion does. It gives you a little bit more. And then you've got these trial areas that you can kind of go at a few times, and, you can kind of fight for, more hidden secrets and truths, and it's just like a neat, I guess you would say, extra trial and or expansion, and just extra gameplay value. And I think this was a good idea, and it does tie into the story, I think, as well, quite well. Because I was kind of like, oh, what are they doing with this setup? And then I was kind of like, okay, I get it. You do your thing, and then it's like, okay, so this is kind of like, oh, what are you going to do afterwards? What's your big goals? Is there unfinished business? This is kind of that. So it just sets the stage for you to do more stuff, and if we do happen to see this franchise kind of continue and get like a follow-up, or see a additional kind of expansion upon this sets the stage for that being possible. But at the same time, you do get a satisfying conclusive story arc for the group that you've been fighting alongside during that main story, right? So new areas, new enemies, new things to do, new battles to have, and that same really graphic, intense, messed up sort of experience that you are probably used to if you've been playing the game prior. So, yeah, lots of different challenges, and I think Apocalypse Tier is like difficulty stuff, so this is usually, I think, a little bit easier. Like, you can really make it challenging if you'd like to. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like, it's fairly accessible if you want different difficulty options too. So we talked about Worldslayer, talked about what it is. You get some other adjustments here or there for some of the meta stuff and gear and all that, and it just kind of, it pushes things forward. It gives you new challenges. It is cool. And okay, so the game crashed, and that counted as one of my attempts to do this, so that is a little disappointing. To be fair, I haven't had any crashes before, so that is kind of an intriguing change-up that I didn't see coming. So I guess I could crash, maybe. So, yeah, keep that in mind. So anyways, I was getting prepared to make the shift over talking about Outriders in general. So Worldslayer, obviously the expansion to Outriders. So the game itself is actually pretty chunky, and there's lots of side content you can do, and you're easily able to play alone or, as suggested, in co-op. It is a very graphic, violent, intensive sort of game that starts out very easygoing, and then there's a certain point where there's a huge shift, and things get wild. The planet is hostile. It's not a nice place. There are monsters. There are other humans that have been jaded by a few decades of warfare, and it is a shooter, but with powerful abilities that you can use, sci-fi stuff, and you have dynamic options for adjusting your stats on your character. You can get different pieces of armor and weapons that are better, or craft or upgrade armor and weapons further, and you get all kinds of different gear combinations going on. You get to make your own character in this world. You get to explore this environment, battle through some crazy setups as you try to, well, survive the various creatures that are around, and you get to make some really gnarly combinations for your battles. Like, I use a bit of a pyro type class, but you can build whatever kind of class you want. And then on top of that, there's obviously a little bit more complex meta if you want to go further in your setups. Like, a lot of folks suggest just doing, a complete focus on the power abilities and stuff as opposed to gunplay. And, there's different ways you can go about it, which is interesting. And I'd also say it's a very good-looking game. Visually, it's very, very impressive. I don't know if this Trials area really shows it off, but you do get to visit some very unique locations, some luscious, some filled with death and violence. And, it really comes down to the areas you're visiting, and you get to really learn about this mysterious, like, I guess you would say culture and or society that has been built and has grown on this place. And then there's also a bit of a deeper mystery. What is going on with these anomalies that grant some people powers and just destroy or vaporize others? You are trying to figure that all out. You are trying to survive. There's a lot of different cinematic moments, a few different characters, and it's interesting to see how characters are handled throughout the course of the game. They do change quite a bit over time as you kind of see their motives and stuff, especially from the beginning opening towards where the darker war is happening. And it may sound a bit odd, but everything makes sense story-wise once you get into it, and you kind of be like, oh, okay, so I see how things have gotten where they are. Keeping some things a little bit vague because it is fun to actually go out there and experience this for yourself, to see this huge, like, shift in the experience. I think that's kind of cool. And it just, like, it plays really well. It's like a second loading or something like that on the next gen. I've noticed, like, you just go to different areas and it's basically instant. It's cool that you can play it all with others. I think that's a really, really nice touch that's available on this, because it is cool to have this game be, hey, you can do it solo, or you can grab a couple buddies and you can dominate all of the opponents that are in the way. And then after the game's done, after the battles have finished and you've taken on the big monsters and the bosses and the enemies, and you've discovered the secrets of the land, which, it's a messed up world, what can I say? Once you've done all of that, there's this extra kind of endgame thing where you are, well, I mean, there's this endgame thing, right? But this is like part of the Worldslayer. In the regular game, you've got this pod system. So in the pod system, you can kind of go and you do these like quick expedition type things to go and take and deal with these pods. And that's how you get continuously better armor and deal with more threats and have more challenges. And you can crank up the difficulty if you'd like to. So that actually is a pretty healthy area of extra content, at least I feel so. I don't know if it's necessarily for everyone, but it's something extra to do if you can't get enough of what this world has to offer. And there really are some like crazy places, really messed up enemies, nuts bosses, and just like really over-the-top action the whole way through. I love the visual effects and the gore elements of it. I mean, People Can Fly put this one together, so you can definitely feel, sort of those like almost, because they worked on a Gears, they worked on Judgment, but you can feel like a Gears of War-esque sort of attitude to it. I mean, they did Bulletstorm too. So it's just their usual kind of really messed up gameplay style that just is really cool and mature and dark and creepy. And I think that really lends weight to having some super, super messed up dystopian type scenarios popping up in this one. As the beginning of the game feels really different from the regular gameplay once you get going. But it's decently ambitious. But I was saying, it's kind of like Gears meets like Destiny a little bit. I do feel that this game is its own sort of thing. It's not really Destiny-like. It does its own style of gameplay, and it's not all like this. Like, this is, again, a very specific setup area where you are getting attempts to move forward, expand, and find out different secrets. The regular game, honestly, is pretty linear. Like, you just move through it area to area, fighting through enemies. It's like a cover-based game, but I find that the cover doesn't really help you a whole lot, so you're better off kind of moving around. That also depends on the type of class setup you have, what you're going for with your abilities, how you're fighting things. It's interesting. And you get to fight some crazy stuff. Like I said, that anomaly really does... whoa, what is going on here? That anomaly really does cause some complex issues for the different characters. Like our character, others have, also received these abilities. I can't believe I died that fast. So you get to see some of those powerful beings, out there across your journeys. Will they be friendly? Will they be hostile? I don't know. Everybody thinks they're gods, which is interesting. And you're kind of just there having to deal with it, fighting along the way. And the ascension levels, like the post-game kind of thing with the skill trees. Like, there's different skill trees and different types of armor and different types of challenges. There's a lot to this game. It is actually, to me, fairly impressive. I liked the core game. I found it fun. I found it enjoyable. I think it has a lot of different ways that you can play it and see what it has to offer. And I think it's just a good time. It's a good RPG shooter experience. It kind of feels unique and different, maybe a little bit niche to some, but I find it kind of fun. Beautiful environments, crazy art style direction for some of these places, and a good sense of mystery as you figure out what exactly is going on within this area. So that basically covers, part 1, Outriders Worldslayer, part 2, the game in general, which I think is certainly worth your time. If you can get, both sort of things together, I think you can have a really long, full gameplay experience that you can play alone or with pals, and it's just a good time. The question is, will you survive the trials of the really messed up place that we're trying to make a home out of, or is everything gonna go really bad? Based on everything you see in this game, things don't go well. Oh, I failed again. That sucks. But anyways, with that, I guess I'll just keep showing off a bit more of the gameplay so you can see it in action. And I don't really have any other details to say, but if you liked that core game, I think you can like playing, the expansion to it. I think you'll get value out of it. Personally, I think so.